the future of work offers a unique opportunity for individuals and organizations to invest, innovate, and impact the world around them, particularly by reimagining the talent supply chain. With lifelong learning and online learning almost a prerequisite, what will the future of education look like? And will that present a unique opportunity for women? It gives me immense pleasure in introducing to you Deborah Quazzo, Managing Partner of GSV Accelerate, to share her diverse experiences of investing in and working with disruptive talent technology companies. Thank you for coming here today.
Delighted to be here. I actually, it was pretty neat. This is my first trip to India. And as I was coming in from the airport 2 nights ago, it was delightful to drive through the celebrations of Ganesha. And it was interesting. I actually have a Ganesha statue in my apartment in Chicago, if you can believe that. So I actually knew what they were doing. And it was fun to listen to the conversation in the prior panel because, of course, Ganesha is all about removing obstacles. And so I think we can all kind of hark back to Ganesha for this accelerating parity at work issues. I think it's quite important. It'll come back around on my presentation. The name of my firm is Global Silicon Valley, or GSV, and we named it that because while Silicon Valley is typically known as a physical place in California, we actually believe it is completely the spirit of innovation and entrepreneurship is really imbuing itself around the world. We like to say from Austin to Boston to Chicago to Sao Paulo to Shanghai to Dubai to Mumbai, conveniently. So I'm delighted to be here at the Future of Work Accelerating Gender Parity Conference, and we'll look at this through the lens of an investor. At GSV, our mission is to accelerate innovation in education and talent technology companies. It is to ensure, we do that with a vision of ensuring that everyone has an equal opportunity to participate in the future, and in particular, the future economy and the future of work. Our passion is that talent is equally distributed, but opportunity is not. It was extremely well said in the new book, 50 Million Rising, the New Generation of Working Women Transforming the Muslim World. The author said, educated women in Muslim-majority countries may represent the world's greatest waste of skilled talent and human potential. We're trying to connect the talent and pipeline to the opportunity pipeline. We look at this as a pre-K to grade continuum. I actually heard that from a number of the speakers today, which is terrific. I think it's critically important. We can't just look at work in isolation. The management of the talent pipeline begins literally at birth, and certainly in the pre-K system. So what we're seeing in the United States, and undoubtedly you're seeing it in India, is that it is really becoming a system that has feedbacks in and on itself. Today we're seeing corporations have huge impacts and huge influence on the college and university market, telling them what skills they need to be training, and then actually into the K-12 system as well, and we'll eventually get into pre-K2. Our investment objective at GSV is to invest in great entrepreneurs who are building pipelines from talent to opportunity. We all know this. These are obviously US statistics, but earnings is directly correlated to education, and it moves straight up from less than high school to a master's plus. David Lenhart a couple years ago asked, is college worth it? In the United States, there's lots of discussion about whether college is worth it. And while this hourly wage premium has probably flattened slightly down, it is still a very substantial hourly wage premium. And today, actually, in the United States, roughly 63% of all jobs require some form of post-secondary education. And yet, our big issue today is income inequality. The top quartile of US citizens, in terms of economics, have a 75% chance of graduating from college, while the bottom quartile only 8%. And that is a big disparity, and that is a big problem. The Milken Institute has done work that says that if we just added 1 year of college across the population, we'd see a 17% increase in GDP, and college attainment certainly drives GDP per capita, as shown by the chart below. So, step back and say we live in a very exponential time. There is no doubt about that. Many of the speakers have talked about that today. It's interesting to actually look at the time it has taken for innovations to reach 50 million people and how that is moving exponentially itself. Airlines took 68 years. Telephone took 50 years. Electricity, 46. Computer, 14. Cell phone, 12. Internet, 7. Facebook, 3. Twitter, 2. And Pokemon Go, the winner, at 19 days. It's remarkable. Today, the iPhone was introduced really only a little over a decade ago. Today, there are over 4.8 billion cell phones in circulation, and the frightening statistic is it actually exceeds the supply of toothbrushes in the world. I don't know, I have a couple of toothbrushes and only one cell phone, but stark statistic. It's also fascinating, and I think this actually plays into the issue of the STEM and computer sciences pipeline for women. A decade ago, if you looked at the 10 largest public companies in the world, it was absolutely dominated by asset-based businesses, oil companies, Exxon, PetroChina, et cetera, Johnson & Johnson, Shell, Walmart, really Microsoft, really the only standout as a software technology company. Today, that has completely changed. The top 10 companies are absolutely dominated by technology companies, and of course, we've seen Apple and Amazon trickle over the $1 trillion mark in terms of market capitalization here in the last couple of months. So we've had a complete sea change in who's controlling our public market world today, and that has a really important implication for gender equality. Melinda Gates launched a new initiative last week, actually, called Reboot Representation. She is after gender equality in the tech sector. As she points out very rightly, as technology's role in society grows, so does the urgency of diversifying the tech sector. Joy Boylamont, I'm not going to say her last name right, but she's fabulous. She's at the MIT Media Lab. She's a Ghanaian American. She's founded the Algorithmic Justice League and is singularly focused on eliminating bias in algorithms. She started with facial recognition issues, and what she says is who codes matter. Whether it's a man or a woman really matters, and we need to move women into the pipeline to become coders and STEM executives. We've also seen, and many of our previous speakers have gone through this, so I'll go very quickly through this, exponential change in the workforce. 33% of workers in the US today change jobs annually. Today's students will have between 10 and 14 jobs by the time they're 38. I'm 57, I've had 3. My daughter is 28, just graduated from Harvard Business School. She has just accepted her 4th job, so she's perfectly on track. 10 more years, she should be at 10. Excellent. 50% of workers have been with their company for less than 5 years. Every year, it's amazing, more than 30 million Americans are working in jobs that did not exist in the previous quarter. By 2020, I know we've all seen these statistics. This is a McKinsey one. As much as 30% of work done globally could be automated, 50% of jobs at risk of replacement in 20 years, and then obviously high correlation around automation and education. The gig is up. We've all talked about the gig economy, so I won't belabor this point, but this is actually US adult population participation in the platform economy, specifically companies like Uber and TaskRabbit and others. It is up 43-fold in just 4 short years and continuing to grow. 82% of millennials aspire to be flexible workers. It's a very important job attribute for millennials. 30% of US workers have a side hustle, which is, again, consistent with some of the previous speakers. From our perspective at GSV, education and workforce innovation is a key to all people having equal access to the future and the future economy. And I think a big question, and this has been a question that has had a negative answer historically, is whether learning and talent technology and learning and talent innovation can actually be exponential. It's not a category typified by exponential growth historically. That having been said, we've actually had a pretty terrific decade in terms of growth in the learning and talent technology sector. We've seen US venture funding of education and workforce technologies has actually absolutely exploded, up 6-fold over the last decade to $3.5 billion roughly this year. That's been a fairly consistent number over the last 3 years. So this sector has really become a legitimate and important venture and growth category for investment, and that's critical to delivering innovation. At the same time, you've seen, therefore, many more companies funded on an annual basis, up nearly 3-fold actually, over 200 companies funded each year in the education and human capital technology sectors. Again, a really important factor. As a result, what we've seen globally develop is what we like to call weapons of mass instruction in the education technology sector. It was a sector not known for having network effects, and suddenly we're seeing incredible network effects, and importantly, access to learning delivered anytime, anywhere, when you want it, where you want it, which is, I think, a very important development for women and equity and parity, and for getting to low-income people as well. We've seen the global MOOC population grow exponentially from 1.5 million. Really, the MOOC started in 2011, 2012. Over 85 million learners on MOOCs today. Little known fact, Coursera continues to add 600,000 learners a month. You will see the Chinese MOOC, which I'm going to talk about here in a second, probably cause the doubling of this number in a relatively short time. So the open access to high quality learning has made a very big difference and is being consumed by consumers globally. Udacity, one of the poster children here, Sebastian Thrun, a Stanford professor, founded in 2011. He's changed his model, but he still has a very important model. Today they have over 8 million students and they're in 190 countries. Critical, they're a perfect pipeline example of a company that delivers education and takes those students and delivers them right to the employer. Whether that's Google or others, they have incredibly tight relationships with employers. Coursera, founded at the same time by 2 other Stanford professors, Daphne Koller and Andrew Ng. Today, Coursera, just short time later, over 35 million students, as I said, still growing quite rapidly, 160 partners, university partners, and they just announced the first delivery of an Ivy League degree online. At UPenn, we'll have a Master's of Computer Science and Information Technology online. Shutang is a subsidiary of the not-for-profit Tsinghua University in China. It was founded much more recently in 2013. Today they have 10 million learners, but by 2021 they project 100 million learners. They expect to go public in the 2021 period. You actually go in their conference room, it says exactly what date they're going public, how much money they'll be making. It's really quite extraordinary, and they'll probably be on target because the demand is tremendous in China, as we all know. Udemy is another platform delivering adult learning in various formats, technology learning, marketing learning, a whole array of courses. They have 20 million students globally, over that, 65,000 courses. They actually have 3 million students in India, 20 million course enrollments, and they don't even have an office here. Khan Academy, I'm sure we've all heard of, over 60 million registered users, 10 billion problems solved. And Baiju is the one Indian unicorn today in the education market, over 20 million users, an incredibly successful business. So let's step back and go quickly through some of the mega trends, some of which have already been talked about today, so I'll go through those quickly. But we as investors think hard about what the megatrends are and therefore where we want to allocate our capital. Certainly people have talked about this. This old system is dead, ain't going to work anymore. You don't play, learn, take a job, and then retire. The new system is you play, you go to school, you do a job, and you learn all the way through it. The old model, enterprises looked at attain, train, and retain. In the new model, with high levels of job turnover, we're seeing it really in the ownership of the worker. It's a learn, earn, and churn model where they learn, earn, churn, and then they learn, earn, churn at a new employer. And this was obviously also said today. It is the days of filling up your gas tank in college and riding off into the future with no further enhancement to your academic or your skill set is over. It's something we call Kaizen EDU and have been talking about for really a number of years. Along with that, we've seen a mega trend, a learning company is an earning company. And this is important because really a decade ago, companies did not feel that learning in the workforce or in the workplace was at all important. It was a completely subordinate offering. It was something that always got cut in a downturn. It was just really not viewed as at all important. Utilization rates today still, even within learning management systems that corporations typically will be in single digits. So, but this is all beginning to change very aggressively. Randall Stevenson, who's the chairman and CEO of AT&T, is a poster child for this. He said that people who do not spend 5 to 10 hours a week in online learning will obsolete themselves. He's in the process of taking 130,000 employees at AT&T and retraining all of them because he feels pretty emphatically that almost none of his employees are actually equipped for today's job, and so therefore they certainly are not equipped for a job 2 years from now. We're also seeing really good research, Deloitte here in this case, where strong learning cultures are delivering better results, higher rates of first to market, higher rates of profitability. And this is an Accenture framework. We had Accenture here today. Accenture's done some extraordinary work around sort of new skilling and the impacts of AI and the importance of learning. But this is a very sophisticated learning framework. This is multimodal. It's everything from peer-to-peer to coaching to doing hackathons. They're taking the delivery of learning in the enterprise extremely seriously, and I believe this is kind of where everyone needs to be going. Another megatrend, clearly, we're all talking about it. You can't go anywhere and not talk about it. It's AI is the new electricity. This was something Andrew Ng said a couple of years ago. He was way ahead of the curve. Again, Accenture work, 42% of executives say AI will be an important part of innovation in their organization. Alan Murray from Fortune, that suddenly this year, we've all been talking about AI, in 2018 appears to be the year that hype turns to reality. Some good work, again, at Accenture, talking to employers. They feel that actually AI will drive net job growth. This is a positive, obviously, but only 26% of those employers believe their workforce is ready. And at the same time, they really don't plan to increase spending, so I'm hoping that's going to be a reallocation of dollars so people can get current on the new technologies. Also, employers tend to think that employees don't want, or are resistant to being retrained, and that does not appear to be at all the case. High-skilled workers are actually quite positive on the potential of AI. Low-skilled workers are actually almost half of them are positive on the impact of AI. 67% of workers believe they need to upskill, and millennials are even more emphatically so. It's pretty interesting. If you look at Andrew Ng teaches on Coursera. He teaches an AI course that is wildly popular. It drives the numbers. We're an investor in Coursera, so I'm really happy about it. But every time Andrew teaches, the numbers go through the roof. He's taught over 1.7 million students since 2012. Just tells you the demand for knowledge in that sector. We've all talked about the gig, so I'll blow through this very quickly. Obviously, you've got labor platforms and capital platforms. Each are growing very rapidly. We've seen huge increases in participation rates in the US. Today, in the United States at least, and perhaps everywhere, these platforms, both the labor and the capital, are being used as income buffers, and important income buffers, but in most cases not as complete replacements for work. Women do definitely, as it has been talked about before, women definitely see gig opportunities as delivering things that they care a lot about: flexibility and control over their earnings. And so it's interesting that there was a big study done by a group recently that's had over 2,000 female gig workers, and 86% of them said they felt like a gig would give them a course towards income parity. In contrast to only 45% of them felt that a, quote, traditional job would do the same. This is a pretty neat gig. VIP kid, Cindy Mi, she's a 4 billion plus unicorn out of China. But she's basically created a technology platform where she is hiring North American teachers to teach English on a live basis into China in the evening and after hours. She'll do roughly $900 million in revenue this year. The company was founded in 2013. Pretty extraordinary. They have somewhere between 60 and 70,000 North American teachers on the platform, and they're adding 5,000 a month. So really an innovative example of where people are going with the gig, and also a wonderful example of a female CEO unicorn, which is quite exciting. Gamification, we're seeing it all over the place. It's important in the delivery of both learning and assessments. We're seeing it being used both for improving engagement, critically important, as well as in doing things like working on bias issues. The gaming population of the world has exploded. You have people like Elon Musk and Mark Zuckerberg telling you that had they not done games as children, and let's remember, at least today, it's mostly white men doing that, they wouldn't have become the programmers they were. But it's an incredibly important factor. We are, at this point in the US, seeing kids doing about 10,000 hours of video games in the K-12 system, which is about equal to the time they're spending in classrooms. And games are not just for children. This is just a smattering of companies in the corporate market that are actually using gamification to drive higher efficacy of their products. As I said a minute ago, really trying to drive better engagement, and in the case of one of these companies, helping focus on some of the bias issues. And finally, platforms as the new institutions. A great example is Andela, a company founded in 2014, which is connecting youth, underemployed youth in sub-Saharan Africa to American tech employers. So Andela really is the employers is typically North America, but Andela is the platform as institution. They stay Andela fellows throughout their employment, and they've got an incredible list. They've incredible accolades in terms of the quality of they're put in a boot camp. They're given incredibly high skill computer sciences training, tech training, developer training, and then we have companies like Facebook and GitHub and others are deploy the Andela Fellows on a virtual basis, which is terrific. And they also have a huge initiative around bringing women into the CS community in sub-Saharan Africa as well. Okay, there was a reference to Serena Williams a little bit earlier. I'm a fan, but that was certainly a controversial episode. I think it is suffice it to say, it has not been an exponential decade for the advancement of women in the United States. In general, we could look at our houses of power, our legislative branches. Basically, female members of Congress are flat over the last decade. U.S. governors are actually down. In best case scenario in our current elections, maybe we're up, but the odds are not high on that. So we're basically flat at sort of 16 to 20%. And we have a 0 in the role of U.S. female presidents, vice presidents, and chief justices of the Supreme Court. So we haven't made a lot of progress in that regard. That having been said, and Joe talked about this earlier, and it is a reason for some optimism that we have seen an explosion of female higher education attainment. 1981, a year before I graduated from college, when Sandra Day O'Connor dashed my hopes for being the first female member of the Supreme Court, she was named to the Supreme Court. It actually coincided with the first year that women had parity in the higher education system. Today, women occupy about 60%, and I think as Joe mentioned, we are in excess of 50% of people receiving graduate degrees. That having been said, parity in higher education is not rapidly translating itself to workforce parity, and I think some of it comes back to choices being made about academic choices being made and other factors, which are important. If you look at leaks in the education to employment pipeline, men and women in the United States basically start out at 50-50, 52% men, 48% women, but by the time you get to the C-suite, women are only 21%. So we definitely have severe leakage that needs to be addressed. We've had a terrific increase, technically on paper 2 times over the last decade, not a really great CAGR, in numbers of female Fortune 500 CEOs, but still comprise less than 5%. Venture-backed CEOs have actually seen large increases in numbers, but again, in terms of percentages, the percentage has plateaued really at 17% since 2012. And actually, there was a report that came out this week that done by a company called Carta that actually provides all the shareholding support for venture-backed companies, and they dominate the market in the U.S. They have about 6,000 venture-backed companies in their database. They did a large study with a women's group, and they determined that of the 6,000 companies, women actually owned 33% of the shares, but they only owned 9% of the value, which is a pretty astounding thing. Has really sent some waves over the Silicon Valley community. Women in power, in terms of if money is power, then women have actually declined in numbers in terms of venture fund investment partners over the last decade, and the gender wage gap has basically been stagnant since 2007. So what's the cause for optimism? I think we've seen incredible activism here in the United States over the last 12, 24 months. Driven by a whole lot of factors, including our political situation. I think that's having some very positive near-term results. It is a record year for women running for Congress in the United States. We've not touched this number, 256 candidates. That's the good news. The bad news is many of them are running very hard races, and it is highly likely that we actually end up with the number being, the people actually elected being flat, but it still is a great sign that women are taking this on. We think the opportunity to collect female talent to opportunity is like adding 2 more engines to a jet airplane. How can you fly with 2? You need to have all 4 working. And the author Sajia Zahidi, who wrote The 50 Million Rising, she's also talking very passionately in her new book about the opportunity, the quiet revolution happening in the Muslim world, with 50 million women having entered the workforce in recent years. McKinsey points out that women's equal economic participation could add $12 trillion to the global economy, and that is nothing to quibble over. So what do we do? I do think it's critically important to talk about the pipeline. And if technology companies are dominating the world, and if technology departments are actually dominating the world, if we can't bring women better into the STEM pipeline, I think we're in a tough position, because we're going to have a hard time getting pay equity with women into the high-paying, high-demand jobs. So we need to be working on this pipeline all along the route. The reality is that women are chronically underrepresented at every stage of the tech journey. In K-12, only 23% take advanced placement computer science tests. In higher education, only 19% of the computer science degrees are earned by women, and that is actually down. The only STEM degrees where women are actually declining. And then in the workforce, big underrepresentation. It is possible. It's completely possible. I have the great privilege of being on the board of a university called Harvey Mudd College. It is a very elite, very difficult, very challenging engineering school in the United States, run by this wonderful Maria Clave, who is the president, was formerly the head of the engineering school at Princeton. And Maria came to Harvey Mudd with the intention of really changing the dynamics of diversity within the Harvey Mudd system. And she has done a masterful job. As you see here, CS graduates nationally have declined from 30% in 1990, female CS graduates, to 19% recently. And what she's been able to do is get role models. So she recruited like crazy female faculty. She recruited like crazy in the student body, taking women from a third to a half, roughly. The result, she completely modified the computer sciences curriculum to make it more modern, problem-solving, and things that were more attractive to a female student. And she eliminated macho behaviors, which I'm not sure what that exactly means, but you can only imagine. I think any woman in the room has probably experienced them. But the result has been pretty fantastic. In 2018, over half of the CS graduates of Harvey Mudd were women. Over half of the physics graduates were women. Harvey Mudd is actually the #1 university in the country in terms of starting salary, because clearly all the students are going into very high-paying technology jobs. We have other green shoots, women's in the STEM profession, et cetera. And then to kind of, on the final part is us as investors, as we look at technology startups, we do think technology startups in the United States are having real impacts on fueling innovation that support gender parity, really across all stages of the talent pipeline. This is a great example. Krishna Vedati, he was founded Tinker in 2012, grew up in deep poverty in India, came to the United States, has been a serial entrepreneur. His platform, Tinker, teaches coding skills to elementary school students and serves 5 or 6 million students globally. He's recently done a partnership with Barbie. You do need to start early. Girls need to see what girls can look like if they're engineers and scientists and astronauts. It's been a very high impact program for young girls, normalizing the idea that women can be scientists. So the whole focus of the program is to increase the number of women in STEM. They've done over 1 million coding activities done by hundreds of thousands of girls. We're also seeing big changes here. This is a picture of the old diversity training model. You all remember it. You had to sit in a room. You were forced to do it. It was mandatory. You didn't learn anything, and you were most likely asleep. We are seeing real changes in the delivery of learning, and in particular, AR and VR can be used to deliver, can be used to deliver interesting training around bias. It can allow people to stand in the shoes of a racially different or a gender different person and actually see what it feels like to actually be that person and therefore modify their own behavior. So we're seeing real innovation in the delivery of learning in the enterprise. Striver is a company that came out of Stanford has got a great partnership with Walmart and others and doing some great work. We're seeing great, again, coaching and mentoring is critical. All the feedback, women are looking for mentors, they're looking for coaches. Landed is a company started by a Harvard Business School graduate, Lisa, which has created a digital platform delivering coaching in the corporate customer. She's got great clients like Infor, Workday, Twilio. Upskilling and reskilling, I've really already talked about this, but it's pretty interesting how what these digital platforms can do. Obviously, things are available anytime, anywhere. You don't have to go to a site. You can take the classes from your home. What we're seeing at Coursera is actually that STEM graduates nationally across the pipeline are roughly 28%. There are more women graduating in the STEM programs on the Coursera platform. And the other thing that's interesting is that Coursera has been able to use data exhaust from their programs to modify the nudges that they give people. What they found was that women were falling off too quickly in STEM courses, and that they figured out through the data analytics that women would hit the first test, they would do poorly, and they would quit. Men would do the first test, do poorly, and they'd keep going. They didn't care. Women also respond a lot better to being given material that they can actually study with and improve their next score. So Coursera has actually taken the data exhaust and is now personalizing the learning such that and causing more women to complete courses, which is critically important. And there's also the point that a digital platform allows you to scale female faculty. We all know within STEM sciences, the supply of female faculty is low. We've got to solve that from the bottom of the pipeline. And women are 26% more likely to enroll in a female-led STEM course. Other companies like Pluralsight, this is a $4.5 billion public company, just went public this year. They focus on high-end developers, and they have made a huge commitment to bringing more women, and their clients are the Fortune 500, almost 100% of the Fortune 500 today, and they have made a huge commitment to bringing women into computer science and making their courses more accessible. They've created online communities where women can get together and exchange and talk and have their own community that makes their completion rates higher, et cetera. And they've also done things like given money to code.org to drive more female CS students. And then finally, there is the question about the resume. Textio is actually a machine learning company that does exactly, it's actually job descriptions. They use machine learning to actually crawl job descriptions. They modify for any usage of language that appears to be excessively male. Johnson & Johnson is a big client of Textio's. They said they've seen a 9% increase in female STEM candidates since using the Textio platform. So yeah, I do think language matters, and how you say things matters, and how you describe a job matters. Pymetrics, another Harvard Business School graduate, also MIT neuroscientist. Frida Poli, Pymetrics. She is using gamification and neuroscience and cognitive assessment to basically eliminate gender bias in resume review. This is a huge issue. I was at Goldman Sachs last week. The head of strategy there was saying they would really like to get to a place where they never had a human involved in the recruiting process, which I thought was interesting. I'm not sure I totally agree with it, but I thought it was interesting. The results with Pymetrics is that by using the Pymetrics system, and they're actually, the way they're matching is they're taking high performers from the client company and then matching them up against recruits. And the result has been that they're seeing a much more diverse male-female candidate pool, and then many more women getting first-round interviews. So we do believe technology is making an impact on gender parity, and we think it's incredibly important. Also, just access to female talent. We're an investor in a company called Fairy Godboss, founded in 2015. Today, they have over 2 million career women on their site, and they have tremendous momentum, 80 enterprise customers. And what they're doing is creating transparency around female policies, maternity leave, paternity leave, salary issues, and they're getting peer-based feedback on companies, so companies can actually see what women think about their experience at the company. So it's been, I think transparency is an incredibly important factor in fixing some of these issues. And we've all talked about flexible work. I think women want flexibility. We're seeing high participation rates by women in these gig economy and flexible work pieces. We're seeing more on the capital side than on the labor side, at least in the US. And we're seeing a lot of companies, this is really referred to earlier, like Upwork, 99 Designs, with high levels of female participation in the platforms. Interestingly, in this recent study, 90% of the women would recommend gig work to their friends in a 2,000-person female gig study. Airbnb has also had a huge impact. Women dominate, it's over 55% of the home hosts are women, so there's been tremendous earning by women on the Airbnb platform. So this comes back to, I think, Ganesha and eliminating obstacles. So I think we'd like to see one technology here. This was a stunning poll. Some people have referenced it here today, just about the inordinate burden that women seem to bear, having to do both housework and homework and work. And in this poll that was quoted in the 50 Million Rising book, I did think it was stunning that in every case, women actually polled higher than men in believing that women should be doing both work and housework. I was not polled in that poll, but it is interesting. So I think that maybe perhaps what we really ought to be doing with robotics and AI is coming up with this solution. So I'm looking for Rosie the robot room cleaner. So that's good. In conclusion, womenomics really can generate tremendous global prosperity. We've seen the numbers from McKinsey, which is probably a very, very high number. Role models are critically important. If you can see her, you can be her. This is one of my favorites. If women ruled the world, Joan Armatrading. Moonshots are for men. I really believe it's time for a Venus shot. So thank you very much.